What is up, everyone? Crunchy Frog here, and today is going to be a hotly contested issue, but it's one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, and with the release of Modern Warfare 3, it's really been thrust back into the spotlight. So without further ado, let's just get into it and talk about how skill-based matchmaking is affecting the Call of Duty series. Now, if you've been anywhere near the Call of Duty scene the past 4 years, it's been pretty much nearly impossible to escape the discussion around skill-based matchmaking and kind of the whole matchmaking algorithms that Call of Duty is now using. Way back in 2019, with the release of Modern Warfare, the new Call of Duty Modern Warfare, many new systems and ideologies were implemented that completely turned the CoD series on its head. The old antiquated DLC pack system gave way to the, at the time, industry standard Battle Pass system, which basically just gave core content such as maps and guns to players for free, with the exchange that the monetization model would shift to a more games-as-a-service model of buying cosmetic skins and battle passes. This meant that players could technically continue to play the game 100% free after launch and receive all new content regularly without technically having to pay a single cent extra, with the idea that other people would kind of finance the game by buying skins, stuff like that. However, there was a trade-off. This meant that the game began heavily relying on games-as-a-service metrics and statistics, including stuff like player retention and engagement, to just basically drive up the in-game shop sales to help offset the cost of developing all this quote-unquote free content. Activision's oh-so-important profits now came from microtransactions and skin purchases instead of just scattered map pack releases. No longer was the mantra, quote, make a good game/content and they will come, but rather, how can we just tailor every ounce of this game to drive people to spend money in the digital storefront? Activision needed something that would trap those who were more likely to spend money on small cosmetic offerings, such as casual gamers and brand new, less jaded gamers just entering the franchise. And from this, skill-based matchmaking was born. Long gone were the days of pub stomping and playing with a truly random assortment of the game's population based solely on ping and connection speed. Although a very watered-down version of skill-based matchmaking, mainly used to sort persistent lobbies and divvy up teams, was present in past games, it was never really strong enough to completely protect the casual player base or hinder the more experienced player base. So something more rigid would be needed. And starting with Modern Warfare 2019, games began to be broken down into matchmaking algorithms that precisely curated your experience down to every detail, including, according to some members of the community, even how much damage your gun would do each match. Now, today we won't cover the more conspiracy-laden topics like that and theories such as the aforementioned skill-based hit reg or damage and various other rumored patents that, basically brought up sketchy matchmaking algorithms they were thinking of adding to the game. We won't cover any of that today since a lot of that is highly speculated. Instead, we will focus on that which has been proven several times over by various community-driven studies, including by guys like Exclusive Ace and Drifter and all those guys that just spent hours and hours and hours to prove that this thing existed. That basically the game places you in a new lobby every game that it believes matches your skill set better in order to tailor a more quote-unquote fair gaming experience for everyone. And once again, this is referred to as skill-based matchmaking, or SBMM for short, as you've probably seen it. And while it may work in other game franchises, today we're going to dissect why it just flat out does not work in the Call of Duty franchise. So this is going to be a long one, guys. I hope you stick with me here. And if you enjoy this kind of stuff, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as it greatly helps. And this video took a lot of writing and looking into, so I definitely would appreciate any engagement. So with that out of the way, let's just dive right in. So the first thing you're wondering is, how does this work? Well, basically every player is given an invisible skill rating based on several factors. Now, we can't see this ranking anywhere. It's not listed on your profile or on an online website or API tool or really anything. And it's based on individual factors that are kind of debated and contested amongst the community. But just in general, all you need to know is that it takes a general overview of your skill set, your kill-death ratio, your play style, your accuracy, stuff like that. And even in newer games, you can almost tell that it takes what gun you use into account. If you start using one specific gun, you'll notice that those in the lobby tend to use the same kind of weapon that you are. To give a small example of this, during my gold camo grind in Modern Warfare 2, basically when I started getting into marksman rifles or shotguns or LMGs, kind of the weirder guns, over time you would see that more and more of my lobby would just be players using those similar guns. So it kind of proves that point that it even looks at what gun you're using to place you with similarly minded players over time. And games have been fine-tuning the algorithm more and more every year, with skill-based matchmaking feeling more strict and punishing as the game finds more and more ways to accurately gauge your skill and find similar players. And this basically just leads to each game that's released in succession feeling even sweatier, as the community describes it, than the games before. And to take this a step further, in Modern Warfare 2, the new one from 2022, I know it's confusing, believe it. Engagement only matchmaking is a new term that's being thrown around that was implemented, where it seemingly takes all of the above into consideration, but it also starts picking up and down matches for you. Basically, the way I described it is every match there are pigeons and there are statues, which, if you know that joke, you're either the pigeon or the statue. You can take the analogy from there. And where everyone is basically one tier above or below the other players, almost like a seesaw, right? Where you where they precisely balance it for optimum player retention. So it's less about everyone going 1-to-1 every game because everyone's the exact same skill, and more you're slightly better than some people in the lobby one game, and the very next game you're the one where somebody is slightly better than you. And it kind of works in a way that it tries to toss you a bone every couple matches and give you that one really good match to keep you hooked. And then it follows up by giving you punishing matches, which are someone else's toss me a bone. So to make sense of that, essentially, if your skill level is, say, 60 out of 100, it'll put you with a bunch of 65s, which are, again, close enough because of skill-based matchmaking. And they'll kind of crap on you, so to speak, for the game. And then the next match, it'll give you a bunch of 55s, quote unquote, on the other team, just essentially so that you don't really want to quit playing, and it dangles that carrot on the stick long enough for you to constantly be playing. So it takes that already established skill-based matchmaking formula of only playing with players close to you and slightly manipulates it and start giving you good and bad games to keep you in it and kind of mess with your psychology to play the game more, which, as we talked about before, leads to theoretically more store sales and everything like that. Now, again, you still play with those in general skill proximity, but now they're just trying to play with your emotions to get you to keep playing. And the game still kind of looks for ping. I want to be, upfront and honest about this. It's not completely horrible in that regard, but it heavily, heavily prioritizes putting you with similarly skilled players instead. Even going so far as to hurt your ping or put you in bad connection lobbies all the time just to get you in fair fights. Lobbies that you would have been absolutely miffed to have back in 2009 or 2010 are just the norm now, because that's how far you have to go outside your geological region to find a bunch of players that play just like you. And you will notice the game going well above 100 ping sometimes just to find a game, even though tens or hundreds of thousands of people are playing the game. And if you remember the old games, you used to just fire up a game, and even if 3,000 people were playing, and you lived in a somewhat metropolitan area, like I live near Pittsburgh, right? So there's usually a bunch of people that it could kind of connect me in that kind of mid-Atlantic region, so to speak. And even with, only a few thousand people, instantly get 20, 30 ping matches. But now that's just no longer the case, because it tries to find people that are of my skill level before it really worries about ping all that much. So now we'll get into, you're probably wondering, why is this implemented? This doesn't sound that great, really. And there is some good parts, so we'll cover those first. I want to be positive before we get to the negative. First and foremost, as mentioned above, this is how to make new players stay and casual players stay. They don't want new players to come in and instantly get decimated and then stop playing forever and maybe never buy another Call of Duty game again. And plus, with the more new players that are brought on and stay on, the more profit Activision gets from skin purchases and possible future game buying. I mean, you're talking about Call of Duty, which is a massive media franchise. It's kind of hard to find new people to buy your product when almost everyone has already played it or, has quit the franchise or currently plays it, right? So anything you can do to scrape in any new buyers or sources of profit, you're going to try. This is also reflected in, again, some of those, patents that we talked about that were supposedly canned and not brought into the game, but showing additional matchmaking algorithms for stuff like, putting non-skin buying players that haven't bought cosmetics in with a whole lobby of people that have, to make them go, oh, wait, that's really cool. I want one of those. Now, again, none of this has been proven to actually been put in the game. Like skill-based matchmaking has more or less been proven to be in there. So I'm not going to cover it in too much detail because I don't want to get into speculation. I want cold, hard facts and everything like that to present to you guys to give a real rational viewpoint on this. And this is... For this whole ethos of keeping new players is further proven by several other quote-unquote safe spot design decisions that have been implemented basically since Modern Warfare 2019. They're catering to new players in order to try to hook them and keep them on and get them to buy skins, everything like that. And honestly, it's a double dip. And a lot of the community is not too happy about that because in our eyes, right, if you have skill-based matchmaking, you shouldn't need a lot of the new player-friendly, I don't want to call them handicaps, but sort of handicaps and like safe spots and maps, stuff like that. Stuff that makes it easier for new players and harder for experienced players and evens the playing field. Theoretically, if you have skill-based matchmaking, it should be able to carry that load. And vice versa, if you have those others, measures in place, you shouldn't need skill-based matchmaking. But they're doing both in tandem, and it just creates a very negative aura around the game and a very negative experience for everyone. Now, I did say up above rather, that I want to be positive before we get into the negative. So I will say skill-based matchmaking is a good thing for the lowest 5 to 10% of players. And honestly, it should be enacted for this group, right? This includes brand new players who may not even know how to aim or fire their weapon, maybe older folks that just want to get on, try their grandkids game or something. I know that's probably not even feasible option, but you get my point, right? And this also includes those possibly with disabilities, right? Who may not even be able to physically play the game at like an average person's level, right? And I believe, for these groups, I 1,000,000% stand behind a protected bracket, right? Weeding those, kind of vulnerable players out from the general population and stand behind a protected bracket wherein they can play the game and enjoy the game with those of a similar skill level and not get blasted by, the G Fuel sweats or even average Joes who still far outclass them. Right, as an above average player, I don't even want to constantly beat up players like this. I know a lot of the pro skill-based matchmaking activists and trolls, sometimes even on Twitter and everything, like to say, why would you want to pub stomp? We're not even talking about pub stomping, right? I don't want to get on the game and go 30-0 because I killed, a team of 6 that has never booted up Call of Duty before. That's not what I'm looking for. The game isn't even as fun in those instances, right? However, skill-based matchmaking, in my opinion, should only be enforced in this fashion. And it seems to be a pretty common thread amongst the community that we're all 100% behind having this protected group, the lowest 5 to 10% of skill level players in their own kind of world, and then the other 90% of players, it's just a free-for-all like it used to be. Worry about ping, don't even look at skill. Toss everybody in, you get a random cross-section of players every match, and everybody's happy. So, with that out of the way, we've explained why it's in the game, we've explained how it works, and we've even explained why it's possibly a good idea in some instances. So now it's time to get to the meat of the video and discuss why it doesn't work, and specifically why it doesn't work in the Call of Duty franchise. Call of Duty, by definition, does not have the gameplay loops that really necessitate skill-based matchmaking. In fact, quite the opposite, and I'll describe here shortly. In fact, CoD works mainly as a power fantasy. That's its whole gimmick, right? CoD's gameplay structure is set up to reward streaks or multiple kills without dying. The gameplay's fairly simple and straightforward, right? You kill a dude, you get the happy chemicals in your brain. You die from somebody, you get the angry chemicals in your brain, right? It's pretty cut and dry. And it is one of the main games in the genre because it started basing its multiplayer around these kill streak environments. The nuke has been like the crown jewel achievement in every Call of Duty game since 2009. It even managed to carve out its own market share and niche by way of becoming a kill streak based shooter, right? That's what sets COD apart from a lot of the other shooters that came out back in the late 2000s and certainly nowadays, right? Battlefield doesn't have kill streaks. Other games like that didn't have kill streaks. That's what set COD apart. And streaks are now almost non-existent, at least the higher streaks, in skill-based matchmaking lobbies compared to the golden era lobbies that we're used to from the late 2000s, early 2010s. Instead of everyone in every match, trying and usually achieving the 7-11-25 streak or 7-9-11 streaks like we did back in Modern Warfare 2 2009, people nowadays are just excited when they get a 7 kill streak once every few matches. That is without reverse boosting, which we'll get to later. The entire UI and user experience of COD is driven around the dopamine release of getting a kill, or in fact, multiple kills in a row, and kind of that feeling of being dominant or a badass. You have calling cards and challenges, definitely back in the day, and still kind of to this day, all centered around, making you out to be an alpha, right? And slaying everyone on the battlefield or just being a complete beast and running the lobby. And that's kind of the culture that it started cultivating way back in even COD 4 and Modern Warfare 2. Even the sound for getting kills has been fine-tuned over the years, like the hit markers, the kill markers, headshots, to make you want to get more and more and stack those kills. Your brain wants to hear those sounds. I can't really describe it, but they're just plain satisfying overall. It's really satisfying to hear that, and that's by design. And plus, you get big XP points flashing up on screen every time you kill somebody, including modifiers like how you kill them, like revenge kills, headshots, avenging your teammates, etc., etc. And this has even been parodied in pop culture by shows and other like farce games that were made of just how big of a spectacle COD makes around getting kills and stacking kills. Streaks are also announced to everyone. At least back in the day, it was a huge thing, right? You remember all of the announcers yelling AC 130 above and stuff like that. And your calling card is flashed up on screen. It's meant to be a big bragging right. Look at me, I'm getting all these streaks. I'm the badass in this lobby, bow down to me, right? That's the whole ethos behind this game. And the entire game is based on rewarding you for being the top dog. And now the game, with all of these skill-based matchmaking algorithms and these safe spots and stuff like that, it's just starting to feel like the epitome of the quote-unquote participation trophy culture, right? And it's even worse when the two systems exist alongside one another and lead to the game having this really confused identity, right? It still has part of that identity of everyone's a badass, while also still trying to make it out like this is everyone's game. Everybody needs to have fun. So it's a weird clash of identities, and it just really makes the games not feel good. And to stack on top of that, the kill-death ratio, or KDR, has been played up as a massive factor ever since COD 4, right? That you have much more kills than you ever have deaths. This has been a thing, right? We had guys like Wings of Redemption back in the day. What was his gamer tag? Unlimited UAV, basically broadcasting that he had a 3-to-1 kill-death ratio, meaning he quote unquote constantly was getting UAVs, right? It was a big thing. It was a badge of honor and used its bragging rights or to gauge how good someone is at the game, right? Back in the day, before these super strict modes, if someone came up to you in school or, in your class in college and told you they had a 2.2 KDR, you'd think they were pretty badass at the game, right? You had YouTubers with 3, 4, 5 KDRs in games. That was bragging rights. That was how you gauged how good someone is at the game, which now isn't a thing, right? Because everyone's being boiled down to try to get everyone as close to a 1.0 KDR as possible, perfectly balanced. Insert Thanos meme here. At the end of the day, with COD being an arcade shooter, You're just supposed to have fun when you're killing other players, and no fun or even anger or rage when you're dying, right? You're not supposed to feel that feeling of death all that often. That's the whole point of the game. However, more skill based matchmaking equals more dying. And especially if you're an average or above average player, that is kind of the player base that takes these hits the hardest, right? We talked about the lowest maybe 5% or lowest 10% needing their own bracket. And realistically, if you're in that lowest 10 to 30, 40%, you're also maybe going to enjoy skill based to a certain degree because it's going to start bringing more people from your neck of the woods. However, when you get to the 40th percentile and up, you're basically looking at that's who's really being affected by this, because instead of being better than the average Joe, or at least close to better than the average Joe, you're just constantly average, or you're fighting for your life. Now, I do know that there are other games such as League of Legends and Smash, the Smash Bros. Series, that pretty much require skill based matchmaking in their casual playlist because their gameplay just flows a lot better when you're matched with someone of a similar skill, both on the other team and on your team. Now, these games actively feel boring or even janky when two people of very different skill levels verse each other. Pub stomping isn't something that's really needed or even possible because the skill gap just tends to cause issues in the rhythm of the game, right? Players expect other players to behave a certain way, and there's a push-pull dynamic in those more strategic games, especially in something like Smash or Mortal Kombat, that just doesn't translate to Call of Duty. In those games, skill-based matchmaking makes sense or even is absolutely necessary for the game to play right. And you'll find their entire communities agreeing with it. It's not something that's complained about. It's not something that hampers the experience. If anything, the skill-based in those types of games is great. It helps the game. But CoD isn't about a delicate dance of skill. It's built around being the best and killing the enemy team far more than they kill you, which skill-based matchmaking effectively hamstrings. Now, the next biggest issue with skill-based matchmaking is there's no real sense of progression. Basically, CODs of old, let me just tell you a story of what a new player back in 2008 to 2013 or 14 would deal with. They would buy the game or they would get the game for Christmas and they would start out terrible. Their first couple of games, they would maybe be lucky to get a kill. They'd go 2-10, 2-20, right? You'd see them at the bottom of the score list getting absolutely pantsed every single game. However, slowly but surely, they would learn things. They would get better with the analog sticks. They'd get better aim. They'd learn weapons that were better or learn weapons that they preferred. Maybe they went on YouTube. They watched some, help and how-to videos, and their favorite YouTubers gave them some tricks or a cool sightline to see. And slowly they progressed, and they went from going 2-10, getting absolutely bludgeoned the first week they had the game, to maybe a week or two in, suddenly they're going, 6-10. Or 7-15, right? They're getting closer and closer to getting as many kills as they are deaths. And as that builds up over months and years and several COD iterations later, they would slowly morph and become better and better until they were the ones doing well and they were the ones getting nukes or getting chopper gunners or consistently being at the top of the lobby. And that was the whole fun of Call of Duty. The whole get good mantra started there because you could literally get good. If you weren't so good and you were getting trampled, get better with your weapons, pick better weapons, watch videos to get better, see good players and see the little, ambiances that they have and just the little nuances of their game and stuff like that to learn to get better. Now, me personally, this is exactly what happened to me. When I started on Modern Warfare 2 back in 2009, I got it for Christmas of 2009, so everyone had already had about a month and a half playtime, and that was the first game that I really played on PC. I sucked. I was horrible. I remember my first 2 or 3 days, I was lucky to get 3 kills in a match. I remember actually texting my buddy. It was like the day or two after Christmas. I was so excited. I got 5 kills in one match. Now, that you can't start out much worse than that. But obviously, over the years, I got so much better at the game that despite that first couple of months of really bad KDRs, I think right now, after 20 or 30 some days of gameplay on that game, I think my KDR is like a 1.4. So I've done so well in the latter half of my playing time that it even made up for how bad I was in the beginning, right? Because I worked at it. It was something that you could earn and progress in yourself. And that's just completely gone away with skill-based matchmaking. Now, if you get better, you're just placed with better players. You never feel that progression. What is the point of getting better then, right? You constantly hear the Twitter trolls saying, just get good, from all of the, people that support SBMM, or at least claim to. Probably just getting clicks on the internet, but you know how it is. Well, if you get good, they're just going to put you into harder lobbies, which makes you sweat even harder and honestly enjoy the game even less. And, once again, once you complain, once you're there, they'll just tell you to get better again. And it keeps going on and on. And every time you do get better, maybe you get slightly more accuracy. You learn a gun, you learn a map better, you learn a sightline. You're just going to start getting put with players with a higher skill ceiling and on and on. And there's also no rewards for being better since your MMR or ELO, depending on how you want to classify it, your ranking essentially is hidden, right? It's not viewable to anyone. The reward for being good used to be the dopamine rushes, as mentioned above, for playing well and getting better KDRs and starting to get a whole bunch of multi-kills and kill streaks and, finishing well above even. You felt powerful and you had a lot more fun when you played better and won. There was a very distinct advantage for trying harder and getting better, for learning stuff and getting better at the game. And that's to say, there's not even ranked rewards or any kind of rewards for being good at this game to make being good worth it in these casual playlists. And again, we'll get more into the whole ranked playlist in a second. But, typically in ranked playlists, you get a reward or something for being so good at the game. But you don't even get that because it's a casual playlist and it's a hidden ranking. So you're just sweating harder with no reward, no calling card, no nothing. You have no tangible way to see if you've gotten better because nothing changes. You just get harder lobbies. Whenever you started out and you were complete and utter dog water, guess what? You sat right around a 1 KDR. However, you worked your ass off for an entire year and you're probably 10 times the player you were before, but guess what your KDR is? Still 1. And there's no way to show off to others that you've even gotten any better, besides maybe your accuracy rating in the game or anything like that. There's just no way to show others, look how much better I've gotten at the game. Instead, all people see is a typically right around a 1 KDR for pretty much everyone. Even when in the past your stats would reflect how good you were. Like I said, I used to be a 1.3 to 1.5 KDR player every game from Modern Warfare 2 the whole way up to Black Ops 3. And now, ever since Modern Warfare 2019, I have not gotten over a 0.99 KDR. Matter of fact, I think my Modern Warfare 2 KDR is literally 0.99. And as of checking it about 3 months ago, I was 109 kills under a dead even 1. Thousands and thousands of kills and deaths, and I'm only 109 deaths more than kills. That tells you how precise this whole, skill-based matchmaking algorithm is. Whereas back in the day, like I said, as you got better, that KDR would go up. You'd be able to show that to people. You'd be able to brag about that to your friends in school. Now, there's nothing here. There's no sense of progression. Even though you are getting better, right? You're maybe aiming your gun better, et cetera, but there's no metrics to show that because everyone is kind of rising with you, right? That, a high tide raises all ships kind of thing, right? Now, the next point that I'm about to bring up is arguably one that hits home the most for me, and I'm sure a lot of you as well, and that's the inability to play with your friends. Friends of various skill levels can no longer feasibly play together, or at least not have fun while doing so. Skill-based matchmaking, whenever you join up with one friend a lot higher on the skill spectrum than another friend, it tends to try to put the lobby right in the middle, but there's a problem with that. And that's that the best friend, or I guess, bad wording, the friend with the best skill set has somewhat easy games, right? Because the competition is a little below them because it's in the middle, while the guy at the bottom of the skill set is just getting trampled by a bunch of people that are all going to be above him, essentially. Skill-based matchmaking isn't sure how to sort that out, or it puts like half of the lobby is as good as the good friend and half the lobby is as good as the bad friend, and that usually has even worse consequences. It seems confused and doesn't really know what to do in those situations. For example, our friend group has that exact thing. I play with a buddy, you've seen in a couple of our videos, who is exceptionally good at Call of Duty. And he has been for the entire time that we've been friends, the entire time we've been playing COD, back 14, 15 years at this point. He's always been good. He's been one of the best in the friend group, even better than me when I took COD super seriously there in Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3. He was still even ahead or shoulders above all of our friend group. And we also have a few friends that just picked COD up in the last year, and they're not that good at it. And when we all try to play together, we have a horrible time. Because typically, the friend, like I said, that's really good, he doesn't really see a problem with it because everyone tends to be below him once skill-based matchmaking kind of quote-unquote evens things out somewhere along the middle. Me, who's a little bit above the middle, tends to have okay matches depending on some of our other friends that play, but those poor guys that are at the lower skill ceiling and just end up getting trampled, which is funny because that's kind of the exact opposite effect that skill-based matchmaking is trying to give the players in this instance. And having a good player on your team kind of nerfs your experience heavily. And I'll even say that there's been several times where our friend group has not gotten to play COD and has not gotten to get on like the old days, because quite frankly, the lower skilled friends do not want to play with us higher skilled friends. And I don't blame them. To be completely honest, I do not blame them. My girlfriend tried getting into COD earlier this year. She had a horrible time in some of our lobbies because she was just learning the game. And typically she'd be learning against the entire populace, but now she's consistently getting players better than her all the time. And even when she got better, she's still never going to get players worse than her until she's better than me or, any of our higher skilled friends, which is going to take years and years and years of dedication. So it's just not feasible. And because of that, that's killed the social aspect of COD, right? I mean, think back to the days of the golden age of Call of Duty 2009, the whole, that whole age. Think about how many hours and hours you played with friends every day after school. The whole squad would get on to play Modern Warfare 2 or Black Ops 2 or any of those games. Now, that's just simply not a thing. Even when we all have time, even during COVID, when everybody was either laid off from work or working from home and had hours and hours more time to do stuff, we still didn't even end up playing together. Even if maybe we were all playing COD and all in an Xbox party, we weren't playing the game together because we couldn't stand it, right? The experience of playing with someone much higher skilled than you, once skill-based matchmaking got into the mix, just ruined everything. And, back in the day, without that skill-based matchmaking, whenever you face just a general population, everyone would just kind of even out, and carrying the team was obviously still a thing, right? You still had to pull the quote-unquote dead weight, but it didn't feel as oppressive, and the lower skill players still had a chance to beat players lower than them because the group MMR, or the group skill level that skill-based looks at, wasn't a thing. So it wasn't averaging the skill sets. You were just getting random players. So even if they were, say, bottom 25% in skill level, that meant that there's still 25% of your prospective lobby mates that were going to be worse than them. So they could still have fun even if they weren't as good as the top level friend in the group. And it made playing with friends fun. Yeah, maybe it sucked to carry your sucky friend through a match of search and destroy, but that's just kind of how games work. It wasn't that bad. You still had fun. And God, the sheer amount of memories that we made playing COD back in the day with our friends. I mean, I could make an entire hour-long video going into that alone. And now that's kind of been shattered by skill-based matchmaking. As a matter of fact, one of my friends this year unfortunately said that he was not getting the game because he wouldn't be able to play with us. So he won't be getting Modern Warfare 3. Not because he doesn't want to, have fun, not because he doesn't want to get the game, but because he feels like he can't play with his friends, which is what he wants to do the most. And to be honest, that's kind of heartbreaking because especially as adults, being able to bond and play games with each other after work or anything like that is one of the glues that keeps long distance friendships together. And COD is effectively ruining that, something that it helped popularize back in the day. And kind of to continue that last point, lobbies disband constantly because of skill-based matchmaking after the end of every single map, which further hurts that whole social aspect of CoD. Before, lobbies would stay intact for several games, if not hours on end, right? As long as not everybody left, the lobby would stay intact. Friendly rivalries would spring up. There maybe be some trash talking, as we've seen all the videos on YouTube. And many a friend was made by playing back-to-back matches with them. You'd add them on Xbox, next thing you know, you play together. I mean, you've all seen the sappy videos of people getting together with people they met online or through Call of Duty that then became their real-life friends, or they flew across the country to meet them. And you've probably seen countless videos and stories about this, and that's what CoD used to be. However, skill-based matchmaking breaks up the lobby every single time. Now, I know Modern Warfare 2, the newest one, recently introduced a thing where you could elect to stay with your team. I've never had it personally work, but that's at least a step in the right direction. I'm not sure how that plays in with skill-based matchmaking, but it's at least kind of a little bit of an olive branch, but it's just not what we need. Don't give us the option. Just keep us in these lobbies. Because again, you're hurting the social aspect of CoD. CoD is one of the most social games apart from MMOs or apart from purely social games that are basically just chat rooms. It's one of the most social games out there, and disbanding lobbies after every single match effectively cuts the cord on that entirely, because it has to recalculate the MMR after every game. And nowadays with the engagement only, it has to decide if it's going to give you an easy game or a hard game, depending on if it thinks you're about to quit or not. And it's sad to see one of the biggest aspects, like I said, of gaming in general just missing from these new games. And it kind of makes the new games feel soulless. You don't get that human connection. You don't get to make friends or make enemies or anything like that with the game. And I know part of that is because they don't want the quote-unquote toxicity of the inter-lobby banter, but honestly, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think the pros far outweigh the cons in that regard. Now, I already have an entire video on this channel, so I'm not going to talk too much more about this. I have an entire video delving into how CoD has effectively ruined its social aspect, so make sure to check that out. But we're just going to move on for now to keep this video somewhat short. Next up is the inability to just play casually. And I want to mention that there is already a ranked game mode where this type of thing should exist. So, as you know, in the newer CoD games, the camo grind is a massive part of Call of Duty. And it's just so much harder, or it's sometimes even impossible to do, because non-meta weapons in the mid to high range MMR lobbies are just not competitive, and you will get slain quicker than you can even imagine. And this even applies to random off-meta weapons that you just enjoy using. Maybe you're not trying to go for gold on a specific weapon, but you just really like the look of it, or you really like a weapon, you like how it feels. If it's not a meta weapon and you're in those kind of sweaty lobbies, you're an average or above average player, good luck. Like I said, it doesn't even have to be for camos. You don't have to try to be doing the dumb little challenges like laying down and point blank kills and stuff like that. That also hurts your game experience. But just in general, if you're not using those meta weapons, good luck. And that makes the camo grind super unenjoyable at times, even though it's a well-established, well-put-together, if I have to say so, system. But ultimately, a lot of it's lost because of skill-based matchmaking. It also forces a strictly used meta even more than the past games, because everyone's sweating all the time and trying to find the absolute best weapon to have any kind of advantage in their lobbies, until skill-based just puts them up a level anyways, and then it's null and void, like we talked about before. And especially with the advent of TikTok and other social media platforms, it doesn't help, right? Sweaty gun guides are made almost instantly on release day to try to give players an edge. So now more than ever, you have the meta being emphasized. Whereas before, you really only saw that in competitive games, right? You'd watch a CoD League championship and everybody had one or two weapons because they were the meta. Now that's expanded to the entire game. Everyone is trying to be a slave to the meta. Back in the day, you used to see people getting nukes with cool weapons. You can't do that now, right? Everything is based on the meta. And to couple with this, you can't even relax and play CoD anymore. You used to be able, if you were a decent player, or above average, slightly above average, or average player, you used to be able to just chill and still get right around a 1, maybe a 1.1, something like that KDR, while you're, doing any number of other things, maybe listening to music or chatting with friends or just kicking back and relaxing after a hard day at school or work. Now you need to be on alert at all times. Have headphones on, sitting up or leaning into your monitor or TV, on comms with your teammates, maybe pulling a whole 6-man, something like that. Putting in inputs on the controller as fast as you can, being a movement demon, as they call them, never missing shots without getting punished, etc., just to crack even in a lot of these matches. You essentially have to play like you're in a professional scrimmage or ranked game mode or game ladders or any of those type of game modes every single match. There's no longer a casual Call of Duty experience. It is COD World League every single match, and that applies to any skill level, right? Because if you're a below average player, everyone around you is still going to feel super sweaty, right? It's relative to your skill. So whether you used to have a 0.7 in old CODs or a 2.7, everyone around you constantly trying their hardest at your same skill level, it's going to feel sweaty constantly. And that's how skill-based matchmaking works. And back in the day, mind you, if you wanted to treat a game like that and you put on your headphones and you leaned in and you were zeroed in, that meant that you were going to be rewarded with, if you were decent at the game, really good lobbies, right? I remember playing the game back in the day, and if I was just getting on to play COD, yeah, my KDRs weren't that great. Like I said, 1, maybe 1.1, 1.2 type games, maybe a couple negative games even. But then whenever I turn everything off and I say, no, you know what? I'm taking this seriously. We're doing this thing. Boom, that's when I would work towards the 7, 9, 11 kill streaks. I'd be getting 2, 3, 4 KDRs in some games. I'd be getting YouTube-worthy game clips, which you're probably not watching anything that would have passed for YouTube-worthy back in 2009, because this is probably as good a gameplay as I could get with skill-based matchmaking, just to drive my point home a little bit further. But that's what I mean. Like back in the day, if you did want to put in this effort and you did want to, quote unquote, sweat, you were rewarded, right? Because that meant that you were actually doing well and doing better than everyone else. Or you could kick back and just have a nice, decent game without getting too mad because you were still doing decently well, especially if you were, like I said, slightly above average or better. Now, the biggest nail in the coffin that I kind of mentioned earlier is there is already a ranked game mode. Ranked game modes, or ranked playlists rather, is where skill-based matchmaking makes sense, no matter the game, right? You want to be playing with those around your skill level so that you can find what your skill level is and attain a ranking. So it's not like this game doesn't have a ranked mode, so they have to put in skill-based in the general population. No, they already have a dedicated ranked game mode, and they have for several years now. This is the mode that you can go to if you want to verse players of your skill set, whether that be you want to get, ranked platinum and play against a bunch of other sweats, or if you realize you're not that good and you're like, hey, I want to play with other bronze players, please. That's where you would go to verse those around your skill level. In almost every other game, like I said, except for those that need skill-based, like League of Legends or Smash, ranked playlists or ranked game modes are where you go when you want to verse your peers. Ranked also gives you rewards and incentives for sweating it out. Like we talked about before, there's no rank or visible rank or any visible thing at all in casual playlists, and there's absolutely no rewards. So you get ranked, you play against your, same rank of players, your same general skill set of players, but you get nothing for it. Whereas in ranked, you get something to show for it, right? You get, hey, I'm really good at this game. You can't really tell because I maybe still only have a 1 KDR in the ranked game mode, but that's because I'm treading water against my peers in Gold 4 or Platinum 1 or something like that. That's the whole point, right? You're not expecting to get a 6 KDR when you're playing ranked game modes. That's not the point. The point is getting up through the ranks and eventually getting that badge or those rewards that you get at the end of the season for getting a certain rank. And when you quote unquote get good, as the Twitter trolls say, there's metrics to actually show it. Again, yeah, you still probably have a 1 KDR, but now instead of a silver rank, now you're gold, or now you're ruby or platinum or whatever. So you can see your skill set get better. Last season you topped out at bronze 4. This season you're silver 1. And that's the kind of things that actively reward you for that kind of struggle and grind that you've been on with your peers. And that's where you get rewarded for being better. In casual playlists, you don't get to see anything like that. You don't have a bronze ranking to show that you're better than you were last season. There's nothing. And like we talked about before, that kills any sense of progression. But in ranked, there is. So I don't understand why CoD with a ranked game mode would then carry over that kind of ranked mentality into casual play as well. It just doesn't make sense. And again, in ranked, you have that physical identifier that you can show off to people as opposed to just some hidden arbitrary number that skill-based matchmaking gives you behind the scenes, whenever you play in pubs, essentially. And it's really ironic that skill-based matchmaking in theory stops some people from getting stomped so much, but in reality, that just makes everyone above maybe that lower 10% just sweat every single match. And again, as you slightly get better in the game, the more and more skill-based matchmaking hurts you. And if you ask me, the players that you should at least throw a bone to or make sure they're enjoying themselves are players that have been playing your game for several years. Who's more likely to spend money on your game, really? Is it somebody who has bought the last 6 games and really loves your series? Or is it Jimmy who just hopped on because he wanted to one weekend and he's probably never going to play the game again? It just doesn't make much sense to, kind of make everyone sweat just to appease a very, very small portion of the group that may or may not even make you money. Now, going into the next point is honestly something that I think hurts the actual game experience the most. We talked about kind of what pulls at my heartstrings the most with it hurting the social aspect, but this is something that actively affects the very core experience of Call of Duty. And that's it. The games feel even less fair on top of skill-based because of high ping. It is one of the largest issues with skill-based matchmaking. And honestly, like I said, I think the thing that impacts the game experience the most. It's not bad enough that I'm playing against kids that are kind of as good as me. It's the fact that I'm playing them with 150 ping. And this tends to make people start to believe in kind of the, fringe conspiracies like skill-based hit registration or variable hitbox, like I've been hearing from the Modern Warfare 3 beta. Now, those could be a thing, but again, for the sake of this video, we're going to assume that they aren't. But it just makes people believe that because their ping is so bad that it feels like somebody's downing you in 1 shot and you're downing them in 7 because the game sucks. If you remember back in the day, right, if your connection sucked, your game experience sucked. And now this is just happening every single game, and it's causing people to start seeing ghosts, so to speak, and believing in stuff such as skill-based hit registration. And honestly, because of the ping, it feels real. Honest to God, it feels real. And matches just as a whole become laggier. We see packet bursts, we see high latency warnings, we see everything like that. And due to COD's lag compensation system, hit registration, as mentioned above, and other things factor in, including the dreaded "how did he see me before I saw him?" Stuff like that starts to creep up a lot more often when you're in higher ping lobbies. And sure enough, because of skill-based matchmaking, you're almost always in those higher ping lobbies. So you're going to start dying a lot more often to people that you didn't see on your screen, but they saw you for what seemed like an eternity. Or you're going to fire 10 bullets at someone, they're going to down you in 1 bullet. Whereas on their screen, they were firing at you before you even pulled a gun on them. Stuff like that. And the higher ping worse connection means the game just ends up feeling unfair in every single aspect. Like I said earlier, remember how bad it felt back on normal matchmaking protocols whenever you got like above 100 or above a 200 ping in a match, right? Everything felt unfair. Everything felt stacked against you. It wasn't fun. It just was infuriating. Now that's every single match. Now, again, it does still kind of look at ping. It doesn't completely throw ping to the wind, so to speak, but it heavily, heavily prioritizes your skill and more or less doesn't even care about ping until it gets too egregious. And the next biggest thing that you kind of see crop up with a lot of YouTubers, with a lot of content creators, stuff like that, is reverse boosting. Now, because there's a set way to determine who you verse game to game, people are able to game the system. It makes it even more reliable to get good gameplay. It's no longer luck, or it's no longer just, getting really good and betting that you're going to be better than the random 11 people that it matched you with. It's no longer luck. It's no longer, again, getting better enough that you're better than the average. It's just join a bot account or something like that to drag down the MMR, or tank for 10 or 15 matches so that it puts you with bots. And honestly, in my mind, we're not going to get into this debate, but in my mind, that's almost bordering on cheating. Especially if you're going to post it on YouTube and say, oh, world's fastest nuke, or oh, the highest KD game in Modern Warfare 2022, anything like that. It feels like cheating because you're actively gaming the system. You couldn't do that in the old games. You joined a match, and yeah, maybe you got lucky and you got some pretty bad kids in your lobby, but that was just luck of the draw. Anyone could experience this. Now you're physically, these YouTubers and TikTok stars and everything are actively, and sometimes admitting to it, actively putting themselves in games, firing at people that have no chance of ever killing them because of reverse boosting. Now, this enables, like I said, amazing players or content creators to play against the very noobs or bad players that the system was supposed to protect. So the system is so easily exploitable that the very people that this was implemented for are just getting farmed anyways by these content creators because they know how to game the system. When you set up a predictable, reliably consistent system like skill-based matchmaking, it's very easy to circumvent. And several content creators do. Now, I don't, because I don't see the fun in that, and I don't want to tank for 15 matches just to have 2 or 3 good matches to then put on YouTube. I don't want to join in with a fake, have one of my friends run around and not shoot anybody every match so that we get put with bad lobbies. I don't want to go through all that, so I don't deal with it. But countless YouTubers have admitted to it, and I feel like every time you see a clip online, all the comments are, man, how do I get lobbies like this? That dude didn't even fire back at you. How do I get placed in lobbies like this? The answer is you don't without reverse boosting, which is what these people do. And I just think it's dishonest. And again, you're hurting those same players that are supposed to be protected. And depending on how hard you reverse boost, you start getting down into, ashamedly, that lower 5 or 10% of the player base that we talked about before that might be physically incapable of playing the game any better. And that's just really sad to see. And yeah, it's possible back in Modern Warfare 2, some of the nukes that you got, those type of people were on the enemy team anyways, but it was just bad luck. It was just luck of the draw. Now you're actively doing it, consciously doing it. And it's almost to the point where you can't trust any gameplay. Gameplay can no longer be 100% proven to be genuine since, they're purposely playing against poor opposition. You have to question every time. And back in the days, you could just get a nuke or a high KDR lobbies and everyone was super proud of you, super happy for you. Now everything's called into question. There's an asterisk on it every time because everyone can tell that you're playing against bots, and they know that in a normal lobby, someone of your skill set would be going 1-to-1 with, other content creators or high skill players. Now, one of the last things that we'll discuss too is kind of the future of how this is shaping up, and that's with the engagement-only matchmaking evolution that we talked about earlier. I just see this getting far worse as we go down the line, so a lot of the things that I've highlighted above are just going to get worse. And, with the whole give a bone, take a bone away approach that they started, the seesaw thing that I talked about, again, I could just see that bringing up so many more issues that we go on. Honestly, I'll be able to make another separate hour-long rant video like this here in the future, just with stuff like that. So, obviously, with so much criticism levied at this, you're probably wondering, well, Crunchy, how would you fix it? How would you do it any better? Well, for one, I would implement that separate user bracket for just the lowest 10% of players. Once you establish yourself as better than that, you're then thrown in with the general population. Matches also seem more fair because the ping is good. So by default, even if you are playing with, whoever, the match is just going to feel more fair overall because everyone's on the best possible connection every single time. And a lot of COD's horrible lag compensation is removed from the equation. And you just have generally fair feeling firefights and gunfights and everything like that. match after match. So even completely disregarding the fact that you're now playing against a random subset of the population, you could show off your skills a lot easier. Everyone is just going to get much more fair lobbies in terms of what you relay to the server and what it relays back to the other player. It's just going to feel so much smoother. Now, I also believe that the devs should come out and actually acknowledge this issue. If you ask some of the content creators that are flown out to Infinity Ward, they actually say that they don't even tell them or admit to it or speak about skill-based matchmaking behind closed doors. Even when offering to sign NDAs and stuff like that, the developers are tight-lipped, let alone forward transparency to the community. I think they should at least give us information on the system to give transparency. How does it work? What should we expect? And I also kind of hope that they eventually state that they are moving the skill-based matchmaking to ranked only. Now, the sad thing is, the only time I could see them doing this is if they try to use it as a marketing tactic to sell a game that they feel won't sell that well. Like we saw with Modern Warfare 3, right? A lot of the marketing campaign was, hey, look, we finally gave you this thing you've been complaining about for 3 years. Why don't you come back and play? And it was super manipulative and kind of shitty because it should have been patched in years ago, right? But they just withheld it, and now they're giving it to you. That's the little carrot on the stick that they want. And I could see skill-based matchmaking being levied in much the same way. Oh, come in, we finally removed skill-based after not talking about it for 7 years. Come back and play our game. And that's the only time I could truly see it happening, right? They put out Infinite Warfare 2 trailer or something, and it gets another 4 million dislikes, and they're like, haha, I know you don't want Infinite Warfare 2, but we're removing skill-based, so you're going to buy the game anyways. Something like that. And obviously, the big goal here is I wish they would take it out of pubs. Again, except for that 10% player bracket mentioned above. I do still think they should get their own pool to play from so that everybody joining the game can learn the game and get better at it and enjoy the game before they kind of get thrown into the fire, so to speak. And as well, anyone that physically can't play any better, I think they deserve to still have some fun with the game. They don't need to be versing me. They don't need to be versing Optic Scump. No one like that. But everyone else, if you're able, if you're willing, if you're dedicated to the game, you should kind of have to pay your dues like all the rest of us. And it should just be a fair game across the board. In absolute worst case, if they refuse to take out skill-based matchmaking, I want to at least be able to view our MMR or, something equivalent in order to give some bragging rights, right? Yeah, well, I only have a 1 KDR, but my MMR is 670, so that means I'm pretty good at the game. Stuff like that, much like you see in ranked. So you do get that bragging right aspect that CoD is so sorely lacking. So I've already talked you guys' ear off for an entire hour, but just to conclude here, skill-based matchmaking is helpful to brand new players, but I think skill-based as a whole is very harmful for the Call of Duty series. And unfortunately, because some metrics at Activision say that it brings in more profits, it is here to stay. Otherwise, they would have broken silence or removed it by now, and instead it's just gotten worse. And honestly, skill-based matchmaking may ruin CoD for me for good, as it has already many in the community. It's hard to see how much longer I can physically play CoD because it's honestly very taxing, and it just doesn't make me want to play it. I don't feel that sense of progression. I don't get that dopamine rush from being good at the game because every match is just a slog. And I really hope to see a change, but honestly, I played the Modern Warfare 3 beta, and it's the worst it's ever felt. And it's the strictest skill-based algorithm and everything like that. And so it kind of hurts me to say this, but I don't know how much further into the future I can continue to play CoD, especially if skill-based not only doesn't go away, but gets more strict, more punishing. And I think that's a common sentiment against a lot of the community. The only unfortunate part is not a large enough amount of the community is going to stop playing this game because of skill-based to make it matter, right? Activision is still going to be making money hand over fist for this, and it's just going to kind of be unfortunate. So with that, guys, I've already talked your ear off for an entire hour, so I hope you've enjoyed this. I hope this video has given you kind of a new perspective on skill-based matchmaking and kind of made you understand. If you didn't understand why somebody hated it beforehand, hopefully this video kind of clues you in on why it's just really not a good thing for Call of Duty. It's not an inherently bad system, but just not good for CoD. So Now, I want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What are your thoughts on skill-based matchmaking, and what are your experiences with it? Do you think CoD should have it going forward, or do you think it needs removed immediately? Alternatively, is there maybe a middle ground that they could strike in your eyes? Is there a way, a compromise, to basically make it, easier for the developers to implement without completely going against their will? But that's going to do it for today, guys. So I want to thank you all again. And until the next time, I'll catch you later.